आज का भारत सिर्फ आगे नहीं बढ़ रहा, भारत खुद को नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जा रहा है.
Together with my friend Prime Minister Modi, who I was pleased to see again last night, we took on our bilateral relationship and raised it to its highest level ever.
We need new answers. That's why we are coming to India.
And as a citizen of Nepal, India's closest neighbor, I feel a deep sense of pride and optimism seeing this strike.
Hello and welcome. I'm Rashawn Gidwani and you're watching The World Report. Let's take a look at the top headlines for this hour. The United States government implements fresh economic sanctions targeting illicit Iranian oil sales worldwide. This aggressive financial move directly targets and disrupts the revenue stream utilized to fund the Iranian military machine. The United States faces unprecedented economic strain as inflation rates surge to historically high levels. Consumers grapple with the rapidly rising costs of essential goods and services across the nation. The United States Treasury Secretary officially confirms developing discussions for a new specially designed currency note. The high denomination bill features the distinctive portrait of Donald Trump as a tribute to his policies. The ongoing military conflict escalates dramatically as multiple Russian drones strike sovereign Romanian territory. Regional tensions mount rapidly while NATO officials intensify their monitoring of the situation. Global energy markets face extreme uncertainty as crude oil prices fluctuate rapidly within short trading windows. Commodity traders react swiftly to emerging geopolitical headwinds and unpredictable supply shifts across the Middle East. The United Nations officially places Israel on a formal global blacklist of countries compromising human rights. The controversial decision follows repeated investigative reports documenting systemic sexual abuse in detention facilities. The Prime Minister directs the Israel Defense Forces to expand military control over the vast majority of the territory. This strategic expansion drives the entire Gaza Strip deeper into an intense and prolonged armed conflict. The recent Gaza military expansion directly contradicts the initial terms of the Trump-led truce agreement. Diplomatic observers note growing friction and strategic differences emerging between the two longtime allied leaders. And now we have some breaking news with regards to Iran and Oman. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran has discussed the future administration of the Strait of Hormuz with Oman in line with what he described as Iran's sovereign responsibilities and international law. In a post on X, Araghchi said he held a productive conversation with Oman's foreign minister and expressed Iran's solidarity with Muscat in the face of any external threat. The remarks come amid rising tensions after U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly warned Oman to behave during a White House cabinet meeting. According to multiple media reports, Trump appeared to caution Muscat over discussions involving a possible Iran-Oman framework to regulate or toll shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most strategically vital energy choke points, carrying a major share of global oil and gas exports. Oman has long served as a regional mediator between Iran and Western nations, particularly during periods of heightened Gulf tensions. We have Peter Baum joining us now, an international affairs editor, joining us live from the Weekly Blitz, live from London. Mr. Baum, thanks for joining us. With regards to the statement that President Trump has mentioned that Oman should behave during a White House cabinet meeting, what's your take on how this will play out and whether the solidarity between Muscat and Iran will last, will remain?
Yeah, this is a typical Trump comment, and we've come to expect from him such rhetoric, and he's consistently inconsistent in his what he says. But I think this will be swept under the carpet within a couple of days. I don't think the Omanis, though they might have been slighted by Trump's comments, knowing him as they do, and they know him well, might be offended for a short period of time, but I don't think it's going to mean anything in the long run. Oman clearly understands that the Iranians are suffering economically, and Trump will continue to put pressure on the Iranian economy. There are four wars going on here, Roshan. There's the military, there's the diplomatic, there's the propaganda, and there's the economic war. And Trump currently is concentrating on the economic war in order to gain the concessions that the Trump administration want from Iran, if there is to be a peace agreement.
Right, Mr. Baum, please stay with us. We'll be right back with you. Next up, we have some news with regards to fresh sanctions on Iran imposed by the United States. The United States has imposed fresh sanctions targeting Iran's military-linked oil trade, even as Washington and Tehran move towards extending a tentative ceasefire and easing shipping restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions on 8 vessels accused of transporting Iranian crude oil and petroleum products to international markets. Several companies based in Hong Kong and Dubai were also targeted for allegedly helping facilitate oil sales tied to Iran's armed forces. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Washington would not allow Tehran to increase oil revenues for rebuilding military capabilities. The sanctions come at a sensitive moment, with global markets closely watching negotiations linked to maritime security in the Gulf. Despite the renewed sanctions, oil prices slipped slightly amid hopes of reduced tensions and improved shipping access. Brent crude hovered around $93 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate traded near $88. Now we have joining us once again Peter Baum, International Affairs Editor, joining us live from London and the Weekly Blitz. Mr. Baum, with regards to these sanctions, it essentially stops Iran from profiting in the way that they have been for a very long time. Do you believe that this will delay the memorandum of understanding that's supposedly in place right now? What are your thoughts?
Actually, I think it has every opportunity of bringing it here. As this fits in nicely with the time before, and for your viewers and listeners, they must be aware that in the last month, the chokehold that the Trump administration is putting on Iran is getting tighter and tighter. Let's just think what's happened, Roshan. In the last month, we've seen American oil companies take complete control of Venezuelan oil output. We've seen the United Arab Emirates leave OPEC. We've seen new oil pipelines which will eventually create the conditions that, whereas at the moment 20% of oil export is going through the Straits of Hormuz, with the new Fujairah pipelines, that will only be about 10 to 15% in the coming months. And we've also seen the stranglehold of that the Americans have on the Straits of Hormuz, which are not allowing Iranian oil exports and therefore not allowing any revenue to get into Iran. All this tied together, especially when Iran themselves are facing a currency crisis, a water crisis, and dire economic conditions, will further exacerbate the economic pressure that Trump is putting on the Iranians. who are being robust in their defence, but I fear that they will not be able to hold out much longer, especially with this new round of sanctions. So to answer your question, I think it has every possibility, whereas the Iranians like to play for time, like to draw things out, there's only so much that the population can withstand. Don't forget, it was because of the dire economic conditions that led to the riots in the first place in Iran. And I think this is going to increase in the days ahead. And I think Trump knows this, his cabinet know this, and I think the sanctions are just another nail in the economic coffin that Iran is unfortunately suffering.
Right. Mr. Baum, thanks so much for joining us. We'll speak soon as we have more developments. We also have Peter Cardillo, chief economist from Spartan Capitals, joining us live from New York to tell us more. Mr. Cardillo, thanks so much for joining us. Now, with regards to this latest development as far as fresh sanctions are concerned on Iran, what's your take on how this will essentially affect their economy, and will Iran be able to bounce back? What's your take? We essentially do have a guest joining us now.
Excuse me?
Yes, Mr. Cardillo. Yes, I believe you were unmuted. Are you with us?
I'm here, yeah.
Fantastic. Did you hear my question, sir?
Yes, I did.
Wonderful.
Okay, in response to your question, I think your previous guest hit the nail on the head. And, Iranians are in dire strait. Their economy is in shambles. And the Trump administration is going to do everything possible to put pressure in order to have them sign a peace deal, and a deal that will more or less be in line with what Trump and his administration wants. Now, of course, there'll also be some concessions in the sense that the Iranians are going to look to save face, such as the Americans. I think, Trump didn't expect this war to go on, for now, 3 months, entering the 4th month. So I think somewhere along the line, concessions will be made. And it's a question of really putting them with their backs behind the wall to the point that they're going to have to just bow down and agree to some peace deal with the United States. But the key is, of course, is the uranium deposits.
Right. Now, we'd also like to bring into the discussion now John Rosso-Mondo, geopolitical and national security strategist, joining us live from Washington, D.C. to tell us more. Mr. Rosso-Mondo, what's your take on how these sanctions will affect Iran and the Memorandum of Understanding, which is supposedly happening right now as we speak, with a deal that should be reached anytime soon? Tell us more.
Well, from what I'm seeing, the administration misunderstands the Iranian modus operandi, which is all about, their religious, opposition to the United States, and about bringing about maximum chaos. They're not going to. They say that they want $20-some billion in frozen assets, and they want sanctions relief. The president, due to domestic pressure, is saying he's not going to give them that. He's not going to give them, an Obama deal. So I just see, a lot of the posturing in the media as, stuff without substance.
Right. Mr. Rosso-Mondo and Mr. Cardillo, please stay with us. We'll be right back with you both. Next up, we have some news with regards to the record inflation levels coming out of the United States of America. The United States is witnessing its fastest inflation surge in nearly 3 years, with fresh economic data showing rising energy costs linked to the conflict with Iran that is pushing prices sharply higher. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index excuse me, the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge rose 3.8% year on year in April, the highest reading since May 2023. According to the U.S. Commerce Department, monthly inflation increased 0.4%, easing slightly from March's 0.7% jump. However, energy prices remained a major concern. Gasoline prices climbed more than 12% in April alone, while fuel costs have surged over 50% since the U.S.-Iran conflict intensified at the end of February. The latest figures are reinforcing expectations that the Federal Reserve could keep interest rates elevated well into next year, as policymakers continue to battle persistent inflation pressures fueled by global geopolitical tensions. Once again, we have Peter Cardillo, chief economist from Spartan Capital, is joining us live from New York. Mr. Cardillo, when I think of inflation, essentially what comes to mind is, yes, when you enter the supermarket, for example, the price of milk and bread will go up or has gone up already. What more can you tell us and our viewers about how borrowing costs have also risen, in the sense that, say there is a young couple in the United States and they're looking to buy a house, now might not be the time. Tell us more.
Obviously, with rates at their high level here, with the 30-year bond up substantially at levels that we haven't seen in many years, obviously the housing market is suffering, and newcomers to the housing markets are basically dying away. And the reason for that is the high cost of not only the high cost of the mortgage, but also the high cost of the house itself. So you have a combination of higher costs, and that certainly is not an incentive for new home buyers to go out and buy homes at this time. And so it's not a buyer's market, and that obviously weighs on the general economy, because the housing market is one of the strong pillars of the U.S. economy.
And of course, then when it comes down to other loans as well, when it comes down to maybe starting a business as well, this would essentially affect those businesses. What more can you tell us about whether or not this will essentially decline in time to come? Do you by any chance have some sort of a time frame in mind?
Well, let's say, this latest round of strong inflation emanated from energy, but also emanated from the tariffs. Now, the tariffs have taken a back seat here. In fact, the headlines seem to have, for the moment, put aside tariffs, and the full concentration is what's happening in Iran, and of course, why the price of oil spiked to levels that we haven't seen in many years. So the bulk of the inflation, obviously, coming from energy. So until there's a reversal in energy prices, I think inflation will remain elevated. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to accelerate from these levels. In fact, in yesterday's PCE price index report, it was elevated, but it did not accelerate from the previous reading, which is a good sign. And so I think it's a question of time. So it all depends on the price of oil. When will that come down? Well, I don't think it's going to come down substantially, or go to pre-war levels anytime in the intermediate future, but it probably could begin to crumble sometime in the latter part of June, early July, which should take us back down to those pre-war levels, and that should relieve the inflationary pressures, and actually should bring down, for instance, gasoline or energy-related products.
Right. Mr. Cardillo, thanks so much for joining us. We'll speak soon as we have more developments. Next up, we have more news with regards to the newly launched or soon to be launched $250 bill, the U.S. $250 bill. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has confirmed plans are under discussion for a proposed $250 bill featuring President Donald Trump. If approved, it would mark the first time a living person appears on modern U.S. currency. The proposal is already triggering a political and legal battle in Washington. Current U.S. law generally prohibits living individuals from appearing on federal currency, meaning congressional action would likely be required before any design moves forward. Critics argue the move could politicize U.S. currency and face court challenges, while supporters say it reflects Trump's political influence and historic return to the White House. Analysts expect any final approval process to face intense scrutiny both in Congress and across the U.S. financial system. Now joining us once more to shed some light on this is John Rosso-Mondo, geopolitical and national security strategist, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Rosso-Mondo, what is the consensus on the ground with regards to this proposal for a $250 U.S. bill? We have seen reports that essentially when it comes down to the polls regarding Trump, the popularity consensus seems low. But of course, Trump is still forging ahead. Tell us more.
Well, you have a lot of very strong supporters of his MAGA movement who have been advancing the idea of a Trump $250 bill on Capitol Hill and have been in discussions with the president and with Bessent for months. And, this goes along the lines of, President Trump putting his name on the Kennedy Center, now the Trump Kennedy Center, and other, monuments to his, presidency. So you have a very small but dedicated, followers of the president. They're pushing this through.
What's your take on essentially whether or not this is a reasonable amount of cash to hold, in the sense that normally in the United States, and I've visited as well, what's the highest form of currency? It's currently $100?
Well, currently it's 100, past, we've had 500,000, 5,000, 10,000 that were pulled out of circulation in the Nixon administration. This is about the 250th anniversary of the United States, and you also have the Trump 250th passport. So this is seems to be more like Trump marketing, but this time using U.S. government printers.
Okay, so it follows a theme like you just mentioned. What's your take on whether or not this will essentially go through?
Well, I think that there will be a lot of pushback. I think that there are a lot of Americans who find the idea of having a living president on currency kind of like aberrant, because traditionally, we've recognized presidents after they've left office, like USS George Bush or USS Jimmy Carter, Reagan National Airport, things of that sort. But I think for this, there's going to a lot of mixed emotions.
Would you say that this essentially follows, like you mentioned, Trump's marketing plan of him being a businessman? Of course, in the United States alone, yes, there's Trump Tower and so on and so forth. Even when Trump leaves office, does he get a sort of residual fee from having a bill with his face on it?
Well, it'll just be like bragging rights for him. He won't get any sort of residual fee. Other than maybe having people paying for items with Trump $250 bills at his golf courses.
Okay, and sir, essentially with regards to what I mentioned, that critics argue the move could politicize U.S. currency, let's say when Trump, of course, gets out of office, then what is the actual plan? Do you have any information on that, about these bills staying in circulation, or will they be out of circulation after he's out of office?
Well, that depends on whoever the next president and the next Secretary of the Treasury is. Just kind of like President Nixon pulling the 500s and above out of circulation in the early 1970s. So it's too hard to determine what exactly will happen and really what the demand will be for people holding on to it. Will they become like collector's items? We have $2 bills with Jefferson's portrait in this country, but nobody spends them.
Right. Mr. Rossamondo, please stay with us. We'll be right back with you. Now we have more breaking news with regards to President Donald Trump. U.S. President Donald Trump has outlined sweeping conditions linked to a possible agreement with Iran, focusing on nuclear restrictions, maritime security, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. In a lengthy statement on Truth Social, Trump said Iran must agree never to possess a nuclear weapon and insisted that the Strait of Hormuz be immediately reopened to unrestricted shipping traffic without tolls in either direction. Trump also claimed that naval mines in the strategic waterway had been removed or detonated, adding that remaining mines would be cleared in coordination with Iran. He further stated that enriched nuclear material buried underground after previous U.S. B-2 bomber strikes would be recovered and destroyed jointly by the United States, Iran, and the International Atomic Energy Agency. The U.S. president said no money would be exchanged until further notice and indicated that additional terms had also been agreed upon. Trump added that he was heading into the Situation Room to make a final determination, signaling that a broader diplomatic or security announcement could be imminent amid ongoing tensions in the Gulf region. Now joining us once more to tell us more about this is John Rossamondo, geopolitical and national security strategist, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Rossamondo, do you essentially believe that Trump, or rather Iran, my apologies, will essentially allow these removal of tolls to pass through? What's your take?
Well, as far as like you're talking about the uranium and so forth, I doubt that they're going to allow Trump to take any of their, uranium out of the country or anything like that. And as far as tolls are concerned, the Iranians have made their so-called sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz a red line for them. And to add a little bit of context, I've close relations with the Omanis, and they deny that they're going to sign anything with regard to tolling the Strait of Hormuz, and that it's all it's Iranian propaganda at this point, because they've stated publicly that they oppose any tolls because they say it's against international law.
Mr. Rossamondo, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.